Good morning, North America. Welcome to Church Talk TV. Lively talk about life, church, and church life. I'm your co-host, Dr. Bill Tenney-Britton, and I'm joined, as usual, by my co-host, Dr. Kris Tenney-Britton, and we're broadcasting from our studio in Columbia, Missouri, the heartland of America. Say good morning, Kris.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to Church Talk TV.
Kris and Bill Tenney-Britton here today to talk about effectively ministering to those folks in your congregation who are non-techie in a tech-driven world.
Oh, yes. So in this episode, we're going to talk about how to engage and disciple those in your congregation who are not internet connected, who aren't able to attend in person. I might say with that, who aren't tech savvy as well.
That's right. They are, yeah.
Some of us.
Yeah, those who just don't get it. And there's normally we say, well, it's our seniors. But I found it's not just seniors. Sometimes you got some young folks who are like, yeah, they kind of divorce themselves from it or whatever.
Yeah.
So we're really talking about how do you help those members become better disciples and attend worship. And so we're not talking about just worship, although we're definitely talking about worship, but we are talking about more than that. So, one of the questions that people ask is, why do people not jump in the pool with the techno world?
Yeah. Well, and there are a number of reasons, right? A lack of internet access. A lot of people are afraid of digital. And there are those who are unable or unwilling to adapt. I talked to a client yesterday, and what he needed in the way of tech to do some pieces that we were talking about, he didn't have those pieces. So he was a little daunted by that. But the other part with that was he really couldn't afford that programming that he needed to do what he wanted. And,
there's some people who are running around with using laptops or computers, desktops that their kids or grandkids have given them. They're older units that can't do all the stuff, all the whiz-bang stuff, and they don't want to learn it. So,
right.
There are those. On the other hand, there's well, we'll get to the other hand in a minute. Let me move on. I was going to go there. So let's say, the question is, why aren't people attending in person? Because you got, why are people not tech? But then you got the people who are not techie, but they could come to church. But we have people who are non-techie who aren't coming to church right now. And there's a number of reasons why people aren't coming to church. Of course, the pandemic is one of those reasons. And then there's health. They may have a health problem. They may be seniors have a broken hip and can't get out. They're in rehab, or they've moved into a convalescent or a care center, or they're just homebound for whatever reason. They can't get up, they can't get out, etc. Go ahead.
Or compromised health. They may be immunosuppressant. They're another thought. We talk about the pandemic, the flu. Talk about pandemonium and pandemic, right? There were, just with flu a couple of years ago, there were places I just did not want to be. And that was in pre-masking days, right?
Yeah. Oh, and then there's those people who are just, they don't want to go into a church building.
Yeah.
They're just, no thanks. And they may or may not have great internet. Of course, that goes with the first part. So there's a number of reasons why people don't go.
Yeah, well, let me toss one more out there, and that's because they're incarcerated. They really can't get there, but we are not going to say anything about that except to mention it today, because we have a future episode on how to reach people who are incarcerated.
Right, we have with someone we're going to interview, bring in, and have conversation. That's what they do for a living, and they've got some great insights on how you can do ministry to those who are incarcerated.
Yes,
but that's something to come. All right. So, one of the questions that I have is are there limits? We're talking about accommodating people, and aren't there some limits? Listen, come on, people. Buy a computer or buy a smartphone. Listen, the flip phone don't last forever. Time to move on. Where do you draw that line in a church to say, listen, we just can't continue to do this. You need to come into the 20th century, let alone the 21st century.
Sure, but so the reality is accommodating people always has demands, or it always demands, say it that way, always demands resources and often additional ministries and programs.
Start new stuff, yeah.
Right. And what we offer is limited by our resource pool.
Every church has only so many resources they can use.
That's right. And that they can afford, to be quite honest.
You have to draw a line sometimes and say, this will, but.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I think it's important that we do accommodate those as often as we can and make at least some marginal availabilities. And you may not be able to do everything, but you can do something to reach your non-techie people.
Well, and here's another piece is we need to be clear about what our parameters are. And part of that is around the parameter of cost. We've got the people who will run it. But I think, too, that there is that parameter of the congregation and what they're willing to do. You know, how far, because, those of us that are ministers or church leaders that are out there, out front, we're early adopters. I like to say sometimes early adapters, that we're out there and you're going to hear all of this today and you're going to be like, yeah, we could do this and we could do that. And I can figure out how to get the money to do this and that. You're going to try all different things, but your congregation may not be on board at all. And so you're going to need to take that into consideration and work through that bridge. We need to be accommodating these people, but this is where we are now. This is a very realistic holdback for us, drawback for us. So how are we going to help get people over that hump and slump?
When the pandemic first started, way back in 2020, I guess it was. Anyway, it seems like forever ago. I was a part of a church that they had a ministry sometime earlier, and they'd bought a bunch of old Chromebooks. And when the pandemic hit, we realized that there were a number of seniors and at least a couple non-seniors who really had no internet access. And we were live streaming the service and all that. So those who, we were locked down, but people could still worship except for those folks. And someone came up with the idea, hey, what if we recorded the service, because they were being recorded anyway, and put them on the Chromebooks, and they'd put together a team that would take them to the folks, and they'd drop them off, and they, back in the day, they had the protocols where they set them on the doorstep, they rang the doorbell, and they walked away, and the people came and got them, and they would watch the worship service on the church's Chromebooks. Mm-hmm. And so, there was a solution, and it took some resources, but in this case, there were resources that were already there. And all we had to do was recruit some folks to come up and take the Chromebooks and then pick them up. And of course, they were downloading and there was training for all that. But it was a marvelous ministry using the resources that they had. And my understanding is that there are still people, even though the congregation is back in live worship, there are still people who get a Chromebook every week because they're not at a place where they want to come. Mm-hmm. And they still don't have internet access. So, there's use your imagination. There are some things you can do. And that's what we want to talk about now is some of the options you have to help bring those who are in that kind of situation, how you can bring worship and discipleship to those folks.
So we've talked about, or you're talking about taking the actual service, a recording of the actual service to them. You could do podcast deliveries as well. And I'm not as clear on podcasts. I only know them about, the audio, right. But listening to it online. And we were kind of joking around. Maybe you're not joking. I thought it was kind of a joke to talk about recording it, maybe even on cassettes, because that may be what people have,
or what the church has. A lot of churches have, the old recording. They could do 4 or 5 cassette tapes of whatever. And then you may have to go down and buy a player. They're still available. You can find them on Amazon. You won't find them in the grocery store anymore.
eBay,
eBay, that's right.
Like
but
eBay.
You can get a couple of those and take them. But also, a lot of folks, they have 4 or 5 cell phones. They didn't trade their smartphones in. And if you can find some folks who have extra smartphones, and you can put the MP3 on there because you can download it without an internet or with an internet connection, but without the cell phone connector, without a SIM card, you can still download and you can take them to folks and they could listen to whether it's Sunday school or worship or whatever small groups. You can record those and put them on a smartphone, I guess a Walkman if you can find one.
Yeah, right, right.
A cassette recording, whatever. So there are options there.
You're going to have to download it though, because you're not going to have cell service.
Right,
and
of course.
Quite honestly, a lot of people don't have wireless service.
That's what I'm saying.
Right?
They have no internet at all.
Well, I didn't hear you say that, so I just wanted to make
do
sure.
this at the church.
Yeah, we were.
And you take them to the folks, and they can listen to the recorded version. The MP3 that's on the file is on the equipment.
Like we have 2 or 3 phones hanging out, or laptop. I mean, a tablet as well,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. Which I want to go back to.
Go
You
ahead,
talked about the Chromebook, where we took the Chromebooks out. Another thing you can do is, if you want to do that, is tablets are really inexpensive, and probably there's people in your congregation that have an extra one or two they could donate. But you could again put the file, download the file at the church, put it on the tablet, and you could distribute those to folks who are unable to attend worship. So it's not just Chromebooks or laptops, but tablets are very inexpensive. And I guess you could actually do the same with your smartphones if people have extra smartphones.
Sure.
So there's ways of doing this.
But remembering that it's not just about worship. It's also about small groups, Sunday school classes. And if people would like to attend live, there is always Zoom. Now, you may be asking, how can you do Zoom if you don't have the tablet or whatever? But people can attend via phone. So what you want to do with that, though, is print an instruction card and
probably laminate it.
And then
with all the phone numbers,
with all the phone numbers to get in,
and the meeting ID, and
that's right.
And the key is not to change it.
Right.
This is the Zoom number we're going to use for all events.
This is the password. Right. Walk them through. You're going to push this and you're going to push that. Now, if you've got people who are economically challenged, right? Then we suggest
who are still paying long distance on their phones.
Right. Then we suggest that the church purchase, would you
licensed.
say licensed?
It's $100 a month. Yeah.
$800 number. That is
not $800 number. An 800 number.
Oh, an 800 number that costs currently about $100 a month. So while we're taping this, it costs $100 a month to have an 800 number, so they can call in through your 800 number. And again, if you think about that, 10 people, $10 more a month, right?
Yep.
2 people, 50, 4 people, 25.
And then they can attend your Sunday school, their small group, and even worship. And be live, and there's interactive when you have that kind of a service. But the other options, the Sunday school and small groups, they can interact, and it's wonderful. One thing I want to say about the instruction card is, on that instruction card, make sure you do things like tell them how to unmute themselves. The *6 is a toggle for mute, unmute, because if there's background noise, sometimes the moderator will mute everybody, and if they don't know how to unmute themselves, they can no longer interact. Sure. So make sure that's on that card, and you deliver those cards when you deliver whatever device, if you're delivering a device. But people who are going to be online, make sure that they get that information.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there's another thing we want to offer that's a little less techy. And it really depends on why the person is not coming. Because if they're uptight or worried about the pandemic or they have health compromising, then this option probably not for them. But there's some people that, you could take the small group to them. I call it small groups delivered, where the small group goes to the folks who are in need, who can't get out, and you meet in their home. And, there's some people who go like, I don't want to have people in my homes and all that. And I get that. So you have to be careful. You could also perhaps have a conversation saying, listen, your discipleship is more important than this. We're not judging the cleanliness of your house or whether there's cat hair or whatever. But it's a balancing act. But you can go to their home and, 2 or 3 people or the whole small group and you can do home worship. You could also do your small group, your Sunday school, and all the rest in home. You don't have to have tech to be able to deliver good discipleship.
Sure. I know of a church where actually the woman lived in a senior center, assisted living setting, and her small group, when she moved into that, and this was pre-tech days, right? But her small group said, hey, we want to come over there and have small group with you. And she was so excited to be able to be there and to host. I want, though, to be clear, you may disagree with me on this. I want to be clear, though, that make sure that person really can't attend church, that it's not just they won't attend church. You may have ministries available to them that would get them to church, except if you're worried, if you have health challenges. So in my not my case, but in my purview, that is a valid reason for why you can't. But you have some people who are like, I'm not coming to church. Sure, you can come to my house. It's setting those parameters, setting your parameters.
Where do you draw the line for your accommodation?
Right. Okay.
All right. So, here's the deal: is we don't have all the answers. Those are the answers that were obvious to us, but you may have some answers. We got some really bright listeners out there doing some really incredible things. So, hey, if you'll let us know thoughts of what you think people could add to do non-tech discipleship and worship for people who can't come, and send us a note at hosts@churchtalk.tv.
Very good. Well, we've got homework for you. And our homework is for you to make a list of those people you know. In this case, we're going to say members or regular attenders, friends of the church, who are not attending and have limited access in your congregation. Who are those people?
Limited internet access.
To the internet, right? And what are you going to do about it? So write those names down, reasons for that, and take a look and say, what is it? How might we be able to accommodate them? And as we've said, start small, have a plan. You can't do it all, but you can do something.
That's right. So, hey, we're out of time, but I want to just say that, adding a ministry like one of these, it takes time. And so before you add anything to your schedule, I want to remind you to go and grab the Get More Time Planner. The URL is right there. Go and get the Get More Time Planner and figure out how to save more time in your week so that you can add important life-transforming ministries like these. Hey, we're out of time. We'll see you next week.
Yes, have a great week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.